Okay folks, what am I doing today? Ariel over here at Nyth, and I just want to go over how I water things in my garden. Now there are several past videos on lots of other things about my water system, so if you're interested in those, go check them out. I'm not going to go into all that because it'll get way too long. But what I'm doing is watering the garden. It's a little bit dry. The sunshine is pretty intense up here at I live a little over 6,400 feet above sea level, and the light's just pretty intense here when the sun does come out, and it did, and it's been just faintly breezy. Hasn't rained in quite a while, other than we get a lot of little thunder showers that like spit rain down, but not even enough to make the surface of the ground wet, and then the sun comes out. But as far as any soaking rain, it's been a while, so things are looking a little bit dry. People have asked me how often do I water. That varies greatly. It depends on how much it rains, how warm it is, how sunny it is, how breezy it is, sometimes how big the plants are or not, how much water they're taking, and so on. If it is very hot, which would be like upper 70s, and no moisture at all, and full sunshine, sometimes every other day. In any other conditions, less often. Sometimes once a week or less. But I want to make sure everything has enough water because I don't want my plants to just survive, just barely alive. I want them to be healthy and happy and producing lots of food for me. So we're going to go down next to the creek and start up the pump because this is creek water coming up here. But before we do that, I want to show you something here. Two things. These, if you need a hose, if you don't have a real little area where one of those like shrinky ones that looks like a crinkly snake works, if you need a good solid garden hose, this kind, and I have some that are black and yellow striped and some that are green and kind of white striped like this. These are called, they're called something like No Kink. I'll link down below to what their real name is for you, but these are terrific. They do not kink. They last forever. One of mine over there I've had since I was 16 years old, I think. I brought it to Wyoming with me when I moved from Pennsylvania, so it is now, what does that make it? About a little over 16 years old. Perfect shape. No issues at all. And some of these others I've bought more recently, but they're all the same brand and they work really well. They're super durable, and if you need a garden hose, they are great. But the main thing I want to show you is actually this sprinkler. Now, I have worked for a whole lot of different people doing a lot of different things that involved using a sprinkler, so I have experience with a good many kinds. These are hands down the best sprinkler I think anybody has ever made. This is just a really, really simple thing. I don't know how well the camera's going to show this, and again I'll link to these down below, but it's one solid piece of metal. There is a gasket in there where the hose screws onto it, but the water comes in here, and then there's simply two holes here that look like eyeballs. And there's a little piece down in there that I'm sure the camera can't show you, but when the water's pushing in here that's pressurized, it hits that piece and it makes it kind of go in a circle, and it sprays out perfectly. Now you can see those holes are big. That is perfect for the fact that I am pumping creek water with sediment in it, because there's nothing to plug up. You know, those little pinhole sized sprinklers, you get one tiny particle of anything in there and it quits running through that hole and then through the next hole and so on. These don't plug up unless you get like a full wood chip or something in there, which is pretty easy to take out again. And there's no moving parts. This is simply one solid piece of metal. Short of, like, I don't know, driving over it with maybe a heavy truck on a paved road, I don't think you could destroy this, or letting it sit with water in it and freeze solid. That could fracture the metal. But other than that, they're virtually indestructible, last forever. I got a friend who's got some he's had for, I don't know, 40 years, and they still work just as good as day one. So if you ever need a sprinkler that you don't want to have to fiddle with all the time, and it's not always plugging up and breaking, and it's supposed to rotate and it doesn't anymore, and it only kind of limply sprays out one side, get these. These are the most awesome kind of sprinkler anybody ever invented, and I don't know why any store sells anything else. So what I've done is just arranged my sprinklers. I can't quite hit they don't spray quite far enough to get the whole garden in one shot. I have 4 sprinklers, and so I've arranged them to cover part of the garden, and then I'll have to move them to cover the other part. but it seems to work pretty well. Just set them up on the concrete blocks here. That helps them clear some of the foliage as the plants get bigger. And now that they're all set up, we are going to go turn them on. So down here at the creek, this is the same pump you guys saw me unhook when we had the last really hard freeze. It's drawing water from down there where Burley is, and I've actually had to move the intake down a few times because this spring, when I first used this, the actual creek level was right here where my feet are. That's how much it's dropped, about 5 feet now as the snowmelt starts to slow down, but it is still running off color and murky, and that's why having a trash pump, this is capable of pumping water with dirt in it, and having those sprinklers that do not plug up when there's sediment in the water is super important for the setup I'm using. Now, just if you're curious, the property I live on, this is the west where water rights are a big thing. The property I live on does have water rights to irrigate out of this creek. Yes, stealing water that you don't own the rights for in the west could still get you shot. So anyway, this pump's super easy to start, great little Honda pump. Turn the gas on, choke on, on. So it's just running on low. I'm going to let that go for just a sec. If this wasn't already primed, I would have to prime it, but it's already full. And then I could just rev it up here. Now you're not going to be able to hear me at all. Now we're walking away from the pump. You can see the water's starting to clear up, but you can also see how it's not crystal clear yet, which it will be by late summer. But also for reference on how much it dropped, it used to be flowing over the top of that big boulder there. So we're headed back up top. Now we come back up top and you can see the sprinklers are all running. I'm actually getting a few drops right over here, getting just a little wet, and it's plenty warm enough for that to feel good. And they're kind of overlapping, which helps because as the plants have gotten this tall, they'll shade the water off of one side or the other if you only hit them from one side. So I like to have them overlap a little bit, and then when they kind of get this half watered, I'm going to move it over to the other half of the garden. What I do now is I look at my clock and I let them run, depending how dry it is and what I'm expecting weather-wise, between 15 to 30 minutes before moving them. Every 15 minutes, oh, that's a little cold. This is snowmelt water we're watering with here after all. You can see, got me sprinkled there on the edge. So anyway, after, every 15 minutes or so, it puts down about 1 inch of water. Now the way this is coming out, that's a 2-inch intake out of the creek into the pump, and then out of the pump, it's coming 2 inches out of there, but then split into 2 1-inch lines that run up the hill, and one end is right about over there, and one end is right about over there, and each one of those has a T on it and feeds 2 1-inch hoses of those hoses you saw me lay around. So there's 2 hoses coming out right there and 2 coming right over there, and I can just drag them back and forth and put them wherever I need to sprinkle or water. And now I can go away and do something else for 15 minutes to a half hour and then come back and move them. So that is how I water. Pretty easy. If you've got questions about past setups I've had, if you wonder about a water ram, which is really cool technology, I built one, put it in that creek. I have a whole video about why that is not what I am using right now. This setup is the most time and efficient method for what I'm currently doing, and it seems to be working well. And again, I will link to those sprinklers and hoses down below. Still getting wet over here. They really are, and I've used a lot of different things working in a lot of situations for a lot of people. They really just are the best I have personally encountered for being durable and indestructible and just continuing to work forever. So now the garden is being watered. It's gonna get nice and moist here and soak down into the soil, and then I'm gonna move the sprinklers over. So that's how I keep my stuff wet. Now again, I live in a very dry climate. We get, I think it's something like 14 inches of total precipitation is our average annual, but most of that, almost all of that, comes down as snow. Sometimes 2 feet of snow to 1 inch of water, because it's very dry snow. but through a whole summer we could get maybe 3 inches of rain total. And as I said, we get a lot of thunderstorms that come over, and they're brief and violent, and thunder and lightning, but it might rain for 47 seconds. That's not an exaggeration, 47 seconds, and not even make enough water drops to moisten the ground surface, and the sun comes back out and it all evaporates. So having the ability to keep my plants moist is very key for me being able to reliably grow a garden in this location. So that's how I water. Be curious what setup you guys use, or if you even have to water. Maybe you live in one of those places where it just rains all the time, and if anything, you got to figure out better drainage for your soil so that things aren't too wet. That is not a problem here. Oh, and just for a few other questions that I get asked, that creek is about 23.5 vertical feet below where the garden is sitting. That's at its summer flow. It comes up a little bit with snow melt, those extra 5 feet or so of elevation when it gets raging and chocolate brown and washing full tree trunks down it. But that's about the elevation I'm pumping up here. And that pump handles pumping plenty of pressure to 4 different 1-inch lines to run all 4 of these sprinklers. Hopefully that answers the how and when and everything else garden watering questions I've been getting. So if you had some other question I failed to answer, please comment down below and let me know what it is, and I will do my best to cover that as well. Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.